Hello everybody, David Budleiser here again with another great tutorial. Today we'll be talking about how to come up with game ideas, and more importantly, how to come up with new, interesting, exciting, or realistic, feasible, and profitable game ideas. Now, I do recommend that you guys check out my site, www.budleiser.com. We have a great section for game assets, the game dev glossary, how to collaborate and find other players, and we'll soon be putting all of our tutorials in a nice section up here as well. So, back to our tutorial. Today's tutorial is a question that came up on Reddit. I really enjoyed it. It was very simple, and you wanted to know, where do game designers get their innovative ideas for games? And so I actually never thought about it before, and it was kind of fun to think about it. And I really came up with that there's about 5 different ways that I come up with games: mechanical, theme, genre blending, demographics, and my team and resources. And we'll go through each of those now. But before that, I figured out that there's 2 major differences between those 3 categories. There's what I call the input method, mechanical, theme, and genre blending, where I kind of care about the mechanics, the theme, and I care about the game more than I care, or more that I focus on the people that are going to play the game. In other words, I think about those, I put those priorities first. And there's other times I make a game that I'll call the output method, or the backwards method and the forwards method, or the selfish method and the unselfish method, whichever you want to come up with. But for now, I'll just call it input and output. In the output method, I tend to focus on who's going to play the game, and then try and make a game for them. Or I think about the resources the company has, or the resources my team has, and what kind of artists and programmers I'm with, and I make a game designed to fit those constraints. And so I focus on the team. And what I've also noticed is that when you're very early, when you're early starting out in your career, this is kind of the bread and butter. This is what gets you excited. This is why you wanted to be a game designer in the first place. But as you get a bit more experienced and you have to start thinking about things like company profits, you tend to focus on these. So in the beginning, these are your high priority, and as you start to make a career out of this, these become your highest priorities. Just something to think about. So what do I mean when I say I come up with game ideas based on mechanics? Well, I like to think about a feature that's in a game. And you can take something that's pre-existing, or you can come up with something completely new, and then you just want to test it and prototype it, or think about how can it be used differently, or what kind of features can be innovated out of a feature just by playing with it and prototyping it. Yeah. A lot of mechanics are like toys. You don't know if they're even going to be fun. You think they'll be fun, but you got to play test it. You got to see what happens. And when we think about some of the most innovative games, something like Doom, when that came out, it was amazing. It was the most innovative thing we've seen in a long time. And when we see a new game and it sweeps the charts, it usually involves either a new mechanic or a very innovative way of refining that mechanic and making it better. Another way that it's fun to come up with games is to start from the theme first instead of the mechanic first. And so you put yourself into this different world or this different universe, or you take a different piece. Maybe your friend has a nice piece of artwork and you say, wow, that would be really cool in a game. And then you start thinking about, well, where could I take that character? What type of game or what type of world would that character be in, and what type of game would be made from that? And that's a great way to come up with games. Another way to come up with games is by taking 2 of them and just mashing them together. And I call that the genre blending method. And if you look at Flash websites and indie games, this is probably the most popular or the most common way of doing things. I think there's a lot of design space still left to go on this, and it's a lot of fun. You just take a couple of games, put them out, even make a list of different types of games like I've done here, and just think, how can I combine a fighting game and a farming game? Well, if you did that, you'd probably end up with something like Clash of Titans. It seems pretty good. It's making a lot of money right now. And now that I've been in the business a while, this is starting to become one of the more important parts of game design, is the demographics. Especially if you're looking to get hired at a studio, a lot of their questions are going to be trying to figure out if you really understand the demographics. Do you understand the difference of making a game for the Xbox and making a game on a mobile platform? Do you understand the audiences that are on Facebook and how they're changing? But it also goes into everything. It even goes into some of the features and mechanics that you put into your game. And probably one of the most important places it goes to is also your tutorials. How a person learns a game is very different. If you consider the way a 12-year-old boy learns to play a game, he just wants to jump right in. He's not going to spend a lot of time reading text. He doesn't want to be confined. He doesn't want to, go from A to B, then get some points, and then be stuck there for 15 minutes. He just wants to jump in the gameplay as soon as possible. Whereas if you look at the demographics, and it's been demonstrated, of a 12-year-old girl, they prefer to have the information presented up front. They want to know how to play the game before they start playing the game. So you want to pay special attention to demographics when you come up with your games. And lately, the most important thing when I make games and think about what I'm going to make is my team. And when I mean team, I mean all of the resources. I mean the programmers that are available to me, or even available in the market if you don't have them yet, or if you're at a studio and you're going to hire a team or put together a team. You want to think about what their expected skill levels are. For programming, one special consideration is if somebody on your team is very knowledgeable about programming AI, because it's a real trick, it's a real challenge. If he's not very good at it, it could take up a lot more time out of the schedule and break your project schedule. And if he doesn't have the right method with it, it could even break the game. It'll take up too much memory, or the game will just stall forever as it's trying to make its decisions. Another thing is your artists. Do you have an art team that's really capable of doing the game that you want to make? There's a lot of people that want to rush out there and start making a first-person shooter or a MOBA or something like that. And they don't realize the amount of animations that goes into that, or the amount of texturing. I've met a lot of 3D modelers who are great at modeling, but they're not so great at texturing. And so then you got to go find a texture artist. And then even though you have a 3D modeler, the 3D modeler wants you to have a concept artist. So you need to have a good 2D artist as well. And so you want to, no matter how big your team is or what company you're working for, you want to take this into special consideration. You want to know how much money you're going to have, if any. You want to know how much time you're going to have when the project is supposed to be finished. And you want to know how many people are on your team and what their skill sets are. And this is my favorite place to start now, because it's both challenging and it's also potentially profitable because you can really finish a game. So I like to start with my team, and I even want to ask them what type of game they want to make. Because it doesn't matter what type of game I want to make. If they don't stay motivated, the game's going to suck. I mean, that's the bottom line. You want as many people to stay as motivated as long as possible when you're making a game. Because I don't care how excited you are at the beginning of making a game, after 6 months of coding and artwork and pipelines and problems and project schedules and project management, it's easy to get burnt out. It's easy to get, stuck in the mud. But if you have a team and they're all motivated for the same reasons, for the same goals, and they're excited about what they're working on, it's going to make a huge difference. So just to summarize again, when you're working with a mechanic, it's because you want to explore a feature or a gameplay concept and see what you can do with it. When you're starting from a theme, it means I have something I want to make a game out of it. I have a piece of artwork or I have a piece of music that's inspired me, and I want to see if I can build a game around that. Genre blenders, when you take two games and you mash them together, or you mash key features from those games. Demographics is when you start with your core audience in mind and work your way backwards. If your producer comes to you and says, we want a game on the mobile market, mid-core, for the age range of 13-year-old girls, 13, 18-year-old girls, well, that's a completely different game than probably what you would have done if you were just working with mechanics. And last, but probably most importantly, is your team. Because I've never worked alone on a game, and I want others to be motivated. So this is what I consider my starting places when coming up with game ideas, and some of the important things to think about the features and benefits and what you want to get out of the game. And again, my name is David Budleiser. I really appreciate it if you check out my site, www.budleiser.com. We've got great stuff for you.